We have one last chapter in William Carey. Chapter 17. Capítulo 17. Página. Don't even joke me. Joke me. I don't know how to count past 100 in Espanol. 205. 205. The name of this chapter is Say Nothing About William Carey. What? Charlotte Carey had never been strong since being seriously burned at age 15. She had not been expected to live a long life, even after she and William had married. That's right. Charlotte Carey is his wife. I was like, when was his daughter burned? But that was his new wife, Charlotte Carey. Okay, so even after, one second, let me just readjust here. Even after she and William had married, most people thought she would live for only a year or two at best. But her love for William had given her a new reason to live. And during their years of marriage, she enjoyed reasonably good health. William loved Charlotte, and the two of them spent as much time together as they could. Like him, she was gifted in languages and read through all of his translations, offering helpful suggestions. By Christmas 1820, however, Charlotte's health was beginning to fail. Each day, William would lovingly carry her out into the garden, where they would sit together for una hora or so, talking, hablando, and praying, y orando. On May 30th, 1821, Charlotte died. They just don't, prepare you for this. They just, and she died.
Why is there so much depression in these books?
Because it's a whole biography. It's their whole life. So it's all the deaths they experienced. It was the saddest day of William Carey's life. The two of them had been married for 13 years and 3 weeks and 72 hours. Just kidding, I made that part up. And William missed Charlotte terribly. 3 more deaths quickly followed Charlotte's. Krishna Pal, the mission's first convert, died of cholera. He had been strong and energetic evangelist up until the week he died. Next came the death of 37-year-old Felix Carey as a result of liver problems. He probably just depressed his liver to bad health. I don't know. Result of liver problems. It couldn't be the curry. Soon afterward, William Ward contracted cholera and died. Within 24 hours, at 54, he was the youngest of the Serampore triad and the first to die. He had been a faithful and valued member of the team. William mourned the passing of each of them. In 1823, William married for the 3rd time. His new wife was Grace Hughes, a 45-year-old widow. She was kind and generous, and everyone at the Serampore Mission was glad when she came to live there. The two of them had been married only a few months when William injured his thigh in a bad fall while stepping out of his boat. When the Governor-General heard about the accident, he immediately sent his private doctor to treat William. The doctor did the best he could according to what was known about the medicine in 1823. William's treatment included having 110 blood-sucking leeches placed on his thigh. In spite of the treatment, William made a slow recovery, and it was 6 months before he was able to walk again. Just as when he had injured his foot jumping from the buggy, William had to be carried to and from his lectures at Fort William College. William's injury was much better by the end of 1823, and William would soon need a good pair of legs to run for his life. The year had been particularly wet, and since almost all of the Bengal region is a huge delta crisscrossed with rivers and swamps, the whole area had begun to flood. The flooded streams and rivers had grown more and more wild until thousands of dead animals and huge trees were tumbling down the Hooghly River in front of the mission. Finally, the river flooded into the mission center and, in the process, washed away William's house. William was home at the time and had to race out to the house to safety to avoid being washed downriver with it. With the house, the garden that had given him and Charlotte so much joy was also washed away. As the floodwaters receded, the missionaries could see the heavy damage the flood had inflicted on the mission buildings, just as he had after the print shop fire. William stood in the midst of the ruins and made plans to rebuild. The next day, he sent off a letter to England to order more bulbs and seeds so that he could replant the garden. To provide some extra money for the rebuilding of the mission, he took on the job of translating government documents into Bengali. Eventually, everything was replaced, and Serampore College was back up and running. Then, in 1827, the King of Denmark granted the college the right for all its departments to confer degrees. Now, remember, Sir William Carey never had an education past 12. He was totally self-educated. So am I. But sometimes it doesn't count for anything. But I'm glad they recognized that you don't need a degree necessarily to teach. This was a great honor, as Serampore College was the first college in India to be granted this right. The irony of the situation was not lost on William. He smiled to himself as he recalled how years before he had encouraged dissenter ministers in Kettering to expect great things from God and to achieve great things for God. Now, here he was, a man with nothing more than a grade school education, heading the first college in India, granted the right to confer degrees. The following year, the new Governor General, Lord Bentinck, decided to take a serious look at the practice of sati. Remember, that's the widow burning? William had done everything he could to keep the horrible practice in public eye ever since he had written his report for Lord Wellesley in 1802. Indeed, he had nagged every governor general since then to make it illegal. Now, finally, it seemed that someone had the courage to do just that. On Friday, December 4th, 1829, Lord Bentinck signed an order declaring the practice of sati illegal in all of India. It was 2 days later, on Sunday morning, that William first read the order. Lord Bentinck had sent a copy of it to William and had asked him to translate it into Bengali so that it could be made public. William was so excited, he wasted no time. He asked one of the other missionaries to preach the sermon at the church that morning, and then he set to work translating the order. He worked as fast as he could. He did not want to waste a single minute, since every minute that passed could mean the death of another widow. He worked all day without even stopping to eat, and by nightfall, the Governor General's messenger was on his way back to Calcutta with Bengali translation of the order. Over the next few years, William had more difficulties to face. The banks in India failed, and all the money the mission had was lost. As a result of the financial crisis, Fort William College was forced to close, depriving William of the income that had kept much of the Serampore mission running. Then there was another flood. Once again, William's garden was washed away, and huge mahogany trees, swept along by the river, crashed through the greenhouses, shattering them into 1,000 pieces. As soon as the floodwaters receded, William began planting a new garden yet again. Why not, move uphill? Maybe. William also plodded on through another revision of the Bengali New Testament and lectured in religion and science at Serampore College. Even though he was now an old man, he remained faithful to the call of being a missionary. He would never give up that call or retire from it. In July 1833, William suffered a stroke. Although he did recover a little, it was soon followed by another stroke and then another. Yet each stroke left him weaker than the one before. Despite the effects of the strokes, William loved to be in his garden and was carried out there every day. In the end, however, being carried outside became too stressful for him. The gardener would bring flowers and leaves into William's room and talk to William about how each plant was doing. William's 3 surviving sons also came to be with him. Jabez came from Rajputana, where he was still running a mission station. William Jr. came from Katwa, where he was doing the same. Jonathan, now 37 years old, came up from Calcutta, where he was a well-known attorney. Many other people came to visit him as well, including the Governor General and his wife. Dr. Wilson, the Bishop of Calcutta, and other newly arrived missionaries. One of the last people to visit William was Alexander Duff. He had come to discuss his own plans to establish a Christian college in India, and William encouraged him. Alexander Duff was deeply impressed with William's years of missionary service in India and talked to him about them also. But since William tired easily, he did not want to stay too long. As he started to walk toward the door, though, William sat up in bed and called him back. "Mr. Duff," he said in a feeble voice. "Oh, Mr. Duff," he said in a feeble voice, "you have been speaking about William Carey. When I am gone, say nothing about William Carey. Speak only about William Carey's Savior." I just felt Mariah just then. She does perfect impersonations of people when she's reading. So, speak only about William Carey's Savior. In the early hours of June 9, 1834, William Carey died quietly in his bed. He was 72 years old. In his will, he asked to be buried next to his second wife, Charlotte. Why not his first wife? Anyways,
Why not his garden?
he directed that a simple headstone was to be placed on his grave. The headstone was to give his name and age, under which was to be inscribed, "A wretched, poor, and helpless worm. On thy kind arms I fall." Okay. William Carey may have seen himself as poor and wretched, but people saw him as something quite different. As his body was carried through the streets of Serampore, the flags of the Danish government house were lowered to half-staff, and the streets were lined with silent crowds of Hindus, Muslims, and Christians, all wanting one last look at the man who had become a well-loved legend in the Bengal region. William Carey, the man who began life as the son of a poor weaver, had taught himself Latin, Hebrew, and Greek. I think that was before the age of 12, keep in mind. As he worked as a cordwainer, when he became convinced that England should be sending out missionaries to newly opened up countries, he helped found the first English Missionary Society. He then felt obliged to go to India as its first missionary. When difficult circumstances surrounded him, he watched his children die and wife go insane. He never lost faith. He always endured, always pressed ahead. In the process, he found the most prestigious college of its time in India. He translated the Bible into many Indian and Asian languages. He helped start numerous churches and schools around India. He spoke out against inhuman practices, and he never once wavered in his calling to share the gospel message with the Indian people wherever he found them. And he donated all of his salaries. He gave all of his money to that effort. In the course of his life, William Carey set a pattern and a standard for missionary work that in the years since his death, many have copied, but few have matched. Wow. I'd say that's quite impressive. I kind of sit here in awe of his life.
And I sit here drawing the Pegasus.
I mean, just think about that. Everything he did. And he did not once return back to England. Ooh. Nice. All right. Good night, niños. Buenos tardes, niños. I was just looking at the cover. There's a peacock on there. Taus. Where's the taus? ¿Dónde está taus? Taus. I don't know what peacock is in Espanol, but in Kurdish and in Arabic, it's called a taus. Fun to say. Taus.